let's get started. So what we're going to be talking about today is aperture, shutter and ISO, and why those three things are probably the most important things that you need to know in terms of your photography development of your skills. Whether you're shooting long distance shots of portraits, of buildings, of people, whatever it may be, you need to make sure you understand those three features. All cameras have them: DSLRs, mirrorless, smartphones. And if you want to sort of become a little bit more sort of savvy with your photography skills, you need to be able to master those three skills. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this camera on. So I'm doing it on a Canon 7D. So I've switched this camera on. It's in manual mode. Okay, so I've got it in manual mode, as you can see. I'm going to go. I'm going to go to my LCD screen and I'm going to switch it on. As you can see, there's my LCD screen, and here I've got the three features that I'm referring to. I've got my shutter, which is this one over here. So my Q button allows me to put it on, and this little button here allows me to hover through it like so. And essentially my shutter is that one there. Okay, what is your shutter? Well, your shutter is like a little gate inside your camera, and essentially you control how quick it opens. So for example, if you have a quick shutter speed, it'll be like that. If it's a slow shutter speed, it'll be like that. So if you want a slow shutter speed, you want more light to go into your camera. Okay, so if I click on the Q button here, I can control that, so I can change it. So if I take it down to maybe 1/30th of a second, and press the take the picture, it will sort of kind of try to focus into the area that you wanted to take the image of. There you go, see how quick that was? If I reduce it down, okay, so if I reduce it down, you can see that's much slower, okay? Why you would have it slower is maybe you might be doing slow shutter speed images, light drawings, etc. So you would reduce that down to below 1 second, and that will allow you to capture slow moving imagery. And also, if you shoot in low lit environments, say maybe you do it in the night or in the dark, then you want a slower shutter speed because you want to allow more light into the camera to expose your image onto the digital sensor. Your aperture is this one here. So your aperture is basically a little hole that opens and closes. So for example, if it's for example f29, that's a big number, but it's a very small opening. What does that mean? Basically, inside your camera, you've got the shutter, and then you've got a little hole. So you can let less light into the camera with that hole. So the shutter and the ISO need to work together parallel. So if you've got a high F number, which is a really small shutter speed, that might be big. You might want to shoot in a really light, bright environment. If you've got a smaller number, say for example you got f5, and this one goes to f5.6, you got a bigger opening. So smaller number, bigger opening. What does that mean? That means more light is going through to your camera sensor. So as a rule, if you're shooting in a sort of a dimmed environment with very low light content in that environment, you might want a smaller F number, maybe 5.6, and you might want a slightly slower shutter speed of maybe 1/30th or 1/40th of a second. Okay, so those two things work together. The third thing that's really important to your photography is the ISO, and this is essentially the sensitivity of light. So when light is passing through, the shutter, when it opens, so the shutter opens, and then there's a hole. That hole detects light, and it detects the sensitivity of light. You can also adjust that. So for example, if you're shooting outdoors on a nice bright day, you might have a really large F number of maybe 8 or 9 because you want less light to go in, and you might want a reasonable shutter speed of 1/40th of a second. So your sensitivity of light is basically your ISO. So your ISO, you can increase and decrease it like so. Okay, so for example, if you shoot outdoor, indoors and it's quite a dimmed environment, you might want a higher ISO. The only thing about the ISO is the higher it goes, the more grainy it could get, your picture could get in a dark environment. So you'll get that sort of grainy look if that's what you're looking for. Okay, but what you really want to do is you want to control your ISO. So what I would suggest you do is, if you're in a dark, like a sort of darkish environment, you might want to play around with your shutter speed and your aperture first, and then play around with your ISO to get the right balance of imagery. But essentially, guys, those three things there are the most important things to your photography development, and you need to know how to control your shutter speed. You need to know how to control your aperture, which is your f number. So again, the larger the f number, the smaller the opening. The smaller the f number, the bigger the opening. So you need to really control how much light goes into your camera. And your ISO is essentially your sensitivity of light. Those are the three key components on your DSLR mirrorless smartphone that you need to know. Everything else, filters, smart filters, and all these other things, you can learn. But just try playing around with those three things on a DSLR camera before you do anything else to get yourself up to speed and spec. Thanks for watching. Any questions, please post, and I'll be happy to respond to anything that you may have. See you later, guys. Bye bye.